howdy. We're in... well, we're almost 24 hours away. It feels weird to say almost, because if we actually go and look at the time, I was debating whether to say we were there or we were almost there, because we've got, what, 33 hours left? More like 34? It drops 2 days from now, or more like 1 day from now, because it's 1 a.m. right now, at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So we're almost there. We're almost there. And I've got a very interesting topic of discussion today. Excuse me for just a moment while I look up something on my phone. So, what I think I want to do today is, I mean, I already did one of the dailies. That's my apologies for that, but I started doing the dailies and I panicked, like, oh my god, wait, I actually have the space to myself. I could do Tukey. Let's do Tukey. The other area is Salmon Shaded Settlement, and then from there I think I'm just going to wander around aimlessly. So basically business as usual. But I was in a car ride with my family. We were going on a trip because it had been multiple years since we've gone on a trip as a whole family. I think the last time we all went together was, pre-COVID even. Maybe even pre-high school. It's been a long time. But we went to Dollywood, which was a great experience. I was happy to go there. Hang on, Salmon's Shaded Settlement, that's okay. Could be worse. Not the biggest fan of, Amoeba Woods, but it's the path through Amoeba Woods that's a bit less annoying. But the funny thing about Dollywood is that it's in the middle of freaking nowhere. So there was a point where my mom was driving, and we ended up on this weird L road that was supposedly a shortcut, because the other option was to go through downtown Knoxville, which I don't know what Waze was cooking, but apparently there was time to be saved if we took a detour, and that detour was a 20-minute long nightmare of a detour through a one-lane super rural road. And it was barely one lane. It was one lane on both sides that may as well have been one lane, period. It may as well have been a one-way road. It was truly awful. I'm just glad I'm, well, you know, mad respect to my mother for dealing with that crap. Having to deal with that for probably 15 to 20 sustained minutes of, oh god, this road sucks. Oh god, if we like swerve off the road here, no one is ever going to find us because we are so far from civilization. Maybe not what you want to think about, but we were thinking it because, you know. Was not the most pleasant experience, but the reason why I'm saying any of this is that while that was all happening, I was looking through a Wikipedia article and sort of just like reading about it, and it was very interesting, and it took my mind off of it. That Wikipedia article was about movies considered the worst. And this is much more of an interesting read than I was expecting. Oh god, right, I can't be looking. I gotta actually look at what I'm doing here. Oh wait, this is the wrong way. Am I going crazy? Oh, yeah, there it is, there it is, there it is. Okay. I'm not going crazy. I was looking through like, wait, where the hell is the purple pass? Where the hell is the purple passage? It's right over here. Come on. Come on, Eriki, work with me here. I'm going to get this thing fixed fairly soon. And then we won't have to deal with this anymore. But for the time being, we have to deal with this. Let me deal with this maze area, and then I'll rattle off some stuff from that list of movies considered the worst, because it is a fun read. And an even more fun conversation. Oh, very strange. Oh, I hate that. Okay, thank God. These are hue coded like the slate doorway is. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is it. Ooh, this is cute. Is there anything special to this place? There's a connection to Pastel Greenland, but I'm kind of in the mood for something a bit more familiar. So I say, do I want to do Virtual City? I do Virtual City every time I say that I want to go somewhere. Oh. Glad to see Pareko is still being Pareko. Oh, let's go. The goofballs. Okay, where the heck do I want to go? I'm fine with just... You know what? I'm a creature of habit. I know this about myself. Let's just go to Rainy Apartments again. Because I don't think we ever got to go to Rainy Apartments last time. The maids were feeling unkind and did not give me the proper connection. Let's do the stuff that I'm familiar with while I look at the list of movies considered the worst. Because this stuff is fun. It's like every once in a while there is a movie that comes out that is just so devoid of value in the traditional sense that is, you can't help but laugh at it. Or at least question why it was made. Or what decisions led to it being made like it was. So the first movie I see on here that I actually recognize is Reefer Madness, which is one of the silliest movies I have ever seen, just in concept. Which is kind of funny, because at face value, the movie is meant to be deathly serious. It's a movie about weed. It's a... hang on. Let me see if I can actually make this jump. It's significantly harder with a sticky arrow key. An exploitation film, that's the name of it. The kind of like, oh, look at what these drugs do. This could happen to you. By reefers, it's referring to weed. It's the most, like, after-school special garbage, this is what pot does to your brain kind of after-school special ever. Except this was shown in theaters. Now, I am fully aware of the effects of marijuana on the brain. That's not what this is about. There's a way to make something like that in a way that is actually, like, informative and classy. This movie is just schlock. This movie is just unapologetic schlock designed to scare people into not doing weed while also saying basically nothing about what weed actually does to the brain, because it was the 30s. It's like, did people really know how drugs affected the brain past a certain point? No, because the most reliable scientific minds of the time were psychoanalysts, which, aren't reliable in the slightest. I could talk all day about how I hate psychoanalysis as a practice, and I hate what it's done. I hate what it did to science as a field for the longest time. But that's neither here nor there. What else do we have? Because a lot of these I don't even recognize. The Terror of Tiny Town I don't recognize. The Babe Ruth story. The Babe Ruth story I have heard like the vaguest of vagaries about. Let's see. Oh god, Fire Maidens from Outer Space. You can tell that that's going to be a good movie just off of the name. Plan 9 from Outer Space. This is a famous one. Every time someone makes a super bad movie, it gets compared to this movie. Plan 9 from Outer Space, directed by Ed Wood, who is kind of known as the Martin Scorsese of bad movies. Every single movie... I've heard people say that he has not made a single good movie in his entire career. All of them were just grade A shit shows like this, and Plan 9 from Outer Space is by far his most famous endeavor. And even for the time, for how schlocky a lot of these old movies were, this was, like, especially bad. The kind of movie that... almost like a parody movie that you would see in another movie or a TV show where the main character goes, "Look, a UFO," and it cuts to a paper plate on a string. Literally, that's the kind of effects that were in that movie. Like, it was bad. It's gained a bit of a cult following, naturally. Now, whether it's deserved is kind of a different discussion, but I feel like there's value to be had in movies that are just plain bad, plain awful. Now, granted, there's a difference between a movie that it's so bad that it's enjoyable and a movie that's just awful. Like, the example, I know that I come back to this example every single time, and this isn't even a movie, but I always come back to Yick. Like, there is a certain, not even schlockiness, but there's a certain enjoyment to be had in just how mismanaged and how comical the entire experience can be at times. Now, it was a miserable experience at other times. But the fun thing about movies, compared to video games, is that you don't have to play them, and movies are always at most like 2.5 hours long, with very specific exceptions, and those specific exceptions are usually good movies, because when a movie runs out of budget, that usually means that it's trying to reach the 90-minute mark rather than far surpassing it. Ooh, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Again, off the name alone, you can tell that's going to be a funny movie. Or, not funny movie, but like a bad funny. Monster A Go-Go, I swear I've heard of this movie before, but I'm not sure where. Maybe it was referenced in like a Futurama episode or something. Because Futurama has referenced old schlocky, like, monster movies before. I'm pretty sure, like, I'm 99% sure that the Futurama special, The Beast with a Billion Backs, is a direct reference to, I found a old an old monster movie called The Beast with a Million Eyes, which, reading through it, I was like, hey, the name's kind of similar. Hey, the plot's kind of similar. It's about a alien who comes to Earth and uses his millions of eyes to spy on humanity, and also he has mind control powers, and he uses those mind control powers to take over the world. And it's almost eerily similar to the plot of that one Futurama special. Except instead of eyes, it was tentacles. Okay. Like before, I'm not going to mess around. I'm just going to go straight in here. It is a little chafing that this path is completely separate from some of the other paths. That entire underground, tile factory location, there is no way to get further into the QXY path from there. I wish there was. And maybe one day that path will be expanded. But now is not the time, I suppose. Manus, the Hands of Fate. I'm pretty sure this movie is referenced in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, if it's the movie that I'm thinking of. You know a movie's good when the first line of the Wikipedia page is, it was made after someone made a bet that anyone could make a movie. That's how you know it's quality. Or anyone can make a horror movie, specifically. So they proceeded to make one of the most trite, abjectly bad horror movies of all time. I mean, you still made a movie, so I guess that still works. You can still say you were right, even though you have people in the movie theater plugging their noses at how horrid that movie that you just put out is. You still can say that you won the argument, and that's all that really matters. God, that's another one. with a name like They Saved Hitler's Brain, that is just nothing good will ever come from a movie named something like that. That is a B movie on the face of it. Oh, right. I forgot, it just spits you out right here. Let's see. Ooh, a sequel. There are a couple of sequels on here that are known for just being outright horrible, even though the original movie was actually quite good. The Exorcist 2, The Heretic. There's another one on here that very similar case of Highlander 2, The Quickening, where the movie kind of, to my understanding, sort of just devolves into science fiction technobabble, and is so bad. It's one of those movies, it's like Postal, where the movie is so bad that the sequel inevitably came out, and the third installment completely ignored the events of the sequel. It's like, okay, we're striking that from the record. It was bad. We know it was bad. Let's move on. And I kind of, part of me kind of appreciates stuff like that. It's like, yeah, look, we know, we messed up. This movie's bad. Let's laugh at it. What else we got? We got the Swarm, which is literally just, oh, people. We got the Swarm, which is literally just, the birds, but with bees. And it's horrible. There's Caligula, which I have heard. I've actually heard stories about this one. Caligula is even though it came out in 1979, Caligula is the reason why a lot of classics people do not trust Hollywood to make anything related to Roman mythology. Roman history, Roman anything, because this movie sucks so bad. This movie is mainly known for being... It's one of those movies that wears its R rating with pride, kind of like Oppenheimer kind of had this problem. Where after a certain point, it was like, in Oppenheimer, after a certain point, it was like, wait, this is an R-rated movie, we can show boobs! Oh my god! So they decided to show boobs, even though it added basically nothing to the story. Except make the audience vaguely uncomfortable. Caligula does that on a grand scale. Let's see. There's a couple of really interesting ones. Ooh, Howard the Duck. Marvel in the 80s was in dire straits. And maybe after a certain point, there will be movies in the modern MCU that'll get put on this list. I don't think they're ever going to get this bad, though. Howard the Duck was a George Lucas production, weirdly enough. Now, the thing about George Lucas is, like, a lot of people only know George Lucas for his, like, space opera stuff. So they know him for Star Wars, obviously. People also know him for the Indiana Jones series. Everything that he did that wasn't those two series was extremely campy, and he knew full well how campy his stuff was. Like, if you want a prime example of George Lucas that wasn't Star Wars, there's a movie by the name of Willow that I think is actually getting a remake. I don't know how that's gonna work out. But Willow, surprisingly competent movie. Very, very cheesy, very, like, it's a very fun movie. Not an amazing movie, but it's a very fun movie. That's the case with a lot of George Lucas's stuff. And Howard the Duck is one of those movies that just does not fly. The writing is terrible. They use the titular Howard the Duck is portrayed by a dude in a mascot costume, and it's nightmare fuel. Ooh. There's also Ishtar, which Ishtar... Let me go and find a different place. Ishtar, very infamous movie for how... I mean, it was critically panned on a massive scale. More than so many other movies. To the point that there was even a Far Side comic that made fun of it. Interestingly enough, though, it's undergone a bit of a critical reevaluation, and Gary Larson himself has said that he kind of regrets making that comic, because he had never actually seen the movie at the time of making the comic. He had just gone off of its reputation. And it's not the best movie of all time. Like, not even close. From what I understand, it's like a pretty middling movie. Nothing too spectacular. Not really worthy of being considered one of the worst movies of all time, though. Because the famous review that was attached to that movie was Gene Shalit, very, like, prolific movie critic, saying, Ishtar is terrible. And I mean, that worked. So a lot of people sort of attach themselves to that A lot of people sort of attached themselves to that review when it came to any discourse about Ishtar. And I mean, that kind of, that kind of, like, mob mentality rings true to a lot of modern, like, gaming journalism as well. Sometimes a movie is bad, sometimes a movie is good, but sometimes a movie is considered one thing because a loud man on the internet says one thing, and then you go and play it, or you go and watch it for yourself, and it's just a completely different experience. Oh, right, I forgot it did that. And like I was saying, I mentioned Yick earlier. The whole reason why I played Yick was almost as a sort of rebellion against that kind of behavior. Of like, yeah, I'm not gonna take anyone's word for it. I know this game is bad. Why is it bad? I want to know, but before forming any concrete opinions, I want to actually play the game for myself. Because I'm in the situation where I can, so I kind of have an obligation to at least see through a good chunk of it. Not to see all of it, because, like, after a certain point, I was just doing it to myself because I knew that if I didn't, no one else would. That kind of thing. After a certain point, I was following through out of spite. I was following through out of sheer spite because, again, if I gave up there, no one else would continue after that point, besides maybe Oni Plays. And Oni Plays is the only Let's Play of that game that I think I have seen on the internet that goes all the way through back to front. And again, I want to be able to say distinctly that the game is shit and you shouldn't play it. I want to be able to say that for sure, in light of the game's strong suits, in light of everything else that would lead you to say otherwise. I want to be able to confidently say that you should not play it. Because otherwise there's a very easy argument to poke holes in, is to just say, well, why do you have this opinion if all you've heard is that you've heard people say a certain thing about the game, but you haven't played it yourself, so how can you say that it's bad? Because that's a very easy argument to disprove, because you can just have personal information that's to the contrary, a personal experience, and then that's all you need to disprove that theory, is just to have a counterexample of you having fun with it. Like, what do you mean this movie is bad? I went to go see it and I thought it was fun. Or maybe I feel like you're being a bit too harsh on the movie, or a bit too harsh on the game because whatever reasons. Let me get off my soapbox. Eventually it gets to the more well-known bad movies. Like, it gets to The Room, it gets to Jack and Jill, but it's a bit further down the list. I think I'm fine with stopping here. And when next we meet, it will be tomorrow. It will be tomorrow night, so it will be only a few hours until Collective Unconscious releases. So, see you then. Thanks so much for watching. Collective Unconscious releases in a day. Yippee!